Thank you, thank you. Welcome to Linker Tonight. Your host, as usual, Dick Skylark. Tonight we have a beefy topic. Blasphemy. Perhaps the most widely known account of blasphemy this day is the Danish cartoon event of 2005. But the reason we bring this up isn't because of some event that happened in 2005. It's because of the French controversy that's happened as of late in France, where Thomas Hobbes was killed. So we felt it was the right time to bring it up. Our boss told us to. So without further ado, I'd like to bring on my good friend. He's an expert in questionable cartooning events. Without further ado, Patrick Dudley. Thanks for being our first guest here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I just want to jump right into it. Start talking about some buzzwords.
Go for it.
Hate speech. Being a creator of a controversial TV show, I'm sure you run into this often. So, for the audience, what exactly is hate speech?
Yeah. That's really a good question. We usually think of hate speech as language that's used to put a particular group down. But in the case of Muhammad cartoons, it really particularly includes slanderous images, often something that can be really visibly seen, such as a video or, like I said, an image. And it's much more likely to cause an uproar within the community because it's something that they can, physically see.
Well, off-the-wall question for everyone in the audience and everyone back home. Could you kind of explain a little bit about the Prophet Muhammad?
You serious?
I mean, I know what it is. I mean, for the audience.
So you decided to do a segment on the Danish cartoons, and it never occurred to you to find out who Muhammad was before you did the show?
I never just quite got around to it. Hey, come on, keep going.
All right, so I didn't picture myself giving a history lesson on live TV, but here it goes. In the Islamic faith, Muhammad is considered to be the messenger of God. So his teachings are the basis for the Islamic faith altogether, which is embedded in the Quran, by the way. And before you ask, the Quran is the Islamic holy book, so you can kind of think of that as like an Islamic Bible, in a way.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
So I think our audience is, dying to hear, from your perspective, what happened in that Danish cartoon event?
So, brief overview, a Danish newspaper printed some cartoons that depicted the Prophet Muhammad in some sort of a satirical fashion, to put it lightly, and the cartoons caused a backlash from the Islamic community all around the world, and in particular it resulted in some pretty extremely violent outlashes in the Middle East.
Is that similar to when the Satanic Verses was published and there were riots in India and Pakistan?
Well, the Satanic Verses kind of took it to a whole new level because there was actually a riot where over 100 people were injured, and it really caused huge uproar in India and in South Africa and just really all over the world. The people were not a fan of that book.
We'll get to the Satanic Verses, but just to stick with the Danish cartoons. So, those violent riots over those Danish cartoons, why did they take it so offensively?
I think it has to do with a mixture of their culture, and if I started making fun of you on your TV show, you probably wouldn't take it too lightly.
Oh, well, me and the audience knows how to win that fight.
Well, let's go for it. I'd love that.
I'm going back to the Satanic Verse and how that book was published. How does that book kind of relate to our topic that we have tonight?
Well, in the book in particular, they really took some direct stabs at the Prophet Muhammad, even worse than the cartoons, because sure, you can see something in a cartoon and it's physically appalling to someone who might be from that ethnicity, but when it comes to what was actually written in the Satanic Verses, they described Muhammad in some ways that would really, if you read it yourself, you'd realize why it caused the uproar that it did.
And that brings us to our question tonight. So I appreciate it, Patrick. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having
me.
me.
And that's going to lead us into our overtime for tonight. How's it going in the back? As we always do for overtime, it's time for our panel discussion. For our first member of the panel, I would like to introduce a dear friend, a PhD religious analyst, my good friend Moss Churches. For our second panel member, I would like to introduce another good friend of mine. She's got an attitude. She's a social satire expert, Sam Whitehall.
Hello.
All right, come on guys, get out here. Let's start the show already. So, thanks guys, thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
Yeah, great to be here.
All right, Moss, let's get right into it.
All right.
So, from my understanding, you're against religious cartoons, right?
No, I like freedom of speech.
Really? That's surprising.
Why is that surprising?
Well, I was told I was getting someone who was against freedom of speech. So, let's lead right into it. Give me your thesis.
I think we really need to address the issue of religious fundamentalism.
Religious what?
Exactly. But no, really, religious fundamentalism, it's the viewpoint where a religion feels that their religious doctrine needs to be followed to the letter. Everything in the book, A to Z, right to the T.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, religious fundamentalism played a really big part in the riots. You see, oftentimes, when fundamentalists feel that their religion is being criticized, they take that as an internal assault on their person instead of just a mild criticism of their belief. So some of the faithful might have viewed the Mohammed cartoons as an attack on their person or their race, whatever they identified with.
Okay, no, that's understandable. So let me ask you this. Is there anywhere in the Quran that says specifically that you can't produce images that depict the Prophet Muhammad?
No, it's really more of a cultural thing.
Interesting. Well,
I think we should talk about Charlie Hebdo.
so Charlie Hebdo, ooh, the guy from France? What happened there?
Charlie Hebdo is a French magazine. It's probably best known for its Mohammed cartoons that resulted in it getting attacked by terrorists. Two separate occasions, as a matter of fact.
I thought it was that newspaper. I've never heard of this before.
Well, to be fair, you didn't know who Muhammad was either.
I mean, I had an idea. He's the guy, that was right.
So, the first attack was in 2011 when the office got firebombed. The second attack happened in 2015 when two gunmen ran into the building and killed 12 of the staff members.
Wow, that's truly tragic.
And we also can't forget about the Satanic Verses incident. Basically, when the book was released in 1988, the Islamic community called for hits on the authors, on the publishers. A whole bunch of people got stabbed and gunned down. Truly tragic event.
That the Satanic Verses, that was the book that was released where it was banned in several countries and also led to hundreds of injuries and riots.
That's right. All because they didn't like the way Muhammad was being portrayed in the book.
No, to my understanding, the book was banned shortly 2 months after in 7 other countries. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Wow, really put a
It's
negative
intense.
vibe.
Yep, that is censorship of free speech.
Wow, it's truly tragic. Thank you for the facts. I definitely feel more, well known about the subject. So, Sam, you want to get into it? How are you doing tonight?
Very well, thank you.
So, I wanted to take a moment to address all the complex issues in cartoons as a whole. In your expert opinion, because you are a satire expert, what do you think is the biggest issue in cartoons today?
Well, I think first of all it's important to address whether or not these cartoons are just satirical depictions of religious views or if they're actually racist attacks on Muslims as a whole.
That's really what's misunderstood here. So, Sam, what is your point?
Honestly, I feel that the cartoons are definitely a satirical take on religious ideas.
Why do you think that?
Well, offensive cartoons, they aren't anything new. There are plenty of examples of cartoons that are outright racist, assaults on people. Consider the caricatures of Jews that the Nazis used during World War II.
It's true.
Not to mention the blatant racism here in the homeland, mainly towards African Americans, post-Civil War years. Well, so some of these images, they're a different tone of voice from the ones the Danish press released.
But when you say different, what way do you mean different?
Well, the Danish cartoons were satirical pieces. They addressed the violence displayed by Islamic extremists following 9/11 attacks and, during the conflict in the Middle East. These cartoons, they weren't used to justify violence or oppression like the Nazi cartoons were.
In what way, though, were, as far as these cartoons, different as far as from the new cartoons to some of the old cartoons?
Well, the old cartoons, they were used as kind of a propaganda to turn the general population against a certain group of people. These cartoons are not propaganda. They're actually attacking, I don't want to say attacking, that's a little extreme. They're pointing out or maybe displaying, some of the extreme things that are actually happening in the world right now. They aren't attacking a religion or a group of people, but rather an idea.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it. She makes a great point. But as you
I
know, in every episode, I like to bring 3 panel discussions. I like to bring 3 members to my panel. So, I like to get every opinion that's kind of out there. So, without further ado, I'd like to bring out my third guest, Arthur Noatail. He is an expert as far as in the opposition to this subject, and I feel like he would bring a great addition to this discussion. Arthur, how about you come on out here? Thanks for being here, Arthur.
Hi, how's it going? Great to be here.
So, Arthur, I'm gonna be blunt. How do you feel about Danish cartoons?
The Danish cartoons are an outrage. The Danish press has no one to blame but themselves for the violence that ensued.
Why do you blame the Danish for this?
Why? I'll tell you why. The harm principle. Nice and simple.
English, please?
I suppose. You see, the philosopher John Stuart Mill wrote a book titled On Liberty.
Huh.
In it, he created the harm principle. Essentially, you can't say something that'll lead to violence.
Well, in your opinion, do you think the cartoons were a direct response to the violence?
I do, and I believe John Stuart Mill would wholly agree with me. He used this example to illustrate his point. If you want to put into print that a corn dealer is taking advantage of the common people, you're simply stating your opinion. If you were to tell a mob that's standing outside a corn dealer's house that he was taking advantage of the common people, all you'd be doing is inciting violence. And at that point, you're just causing harm.
It's corn dealers these days. Always taking advantage of people.
That's an irrelevant remark. And my uncle's a corn dealer. I take offense to that.
All right. You're both missing an important point here.
Am I?
You are, but I'm not. But I'll let her explain. You know, she's probably
Anyway, you're twisting the harm principle. You see, the mob that Mr. Mill was worried about was not formed by what was written in print, but instead by fundamentalists that were looking to lash out. At no time did the cartoons attempt to suggest that a group of people should be oppressed or that religious beliefs should be suppressed. The cartoons were not in a position to cause any kind of harm being inflicted. It took people instigating a mob through rallies intended to promote ideas of religious fundamentalists' beliefs to lead to the violence that was witnessed.
I guess I applied the harm principle in the wrong place to this event. The cartoons weren't to blame. The rabble-rousers were just trying to make a statement against having their religious beliefs criticized. I guess you're right.
Of course I am.
Yeah, I was right too. I knew that the whole time. But anyways, thank you, all 3 of you guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on the show. It was a pleasure having all 3 of you guys for tonight's panel. So that's our show. We've come to the conclusion that free speech means free speech, not speech that doesn't hurt someone's feelings. Tune in next week where we have Tori, the amazing ice skating poodle. Good night, everyone. God bless America.